So good evening once more. Welcome to the second class, Zen and Zazen. Last Monday, I explained a little bit about the sitting posture. Today, I want to talk about the breath and about the mind during Zazen. But before I do that, there was one person from Colombia who asked on YouTube if I could recommend some exercises that make it easier to sit in the lotus posture. And as I'm not an expert on exercises, I wanted to ask Xuan, because she's a yoga teacher, if she could maybe say something about, well, lotus posture, Padma asana, and how it gets easier to sit in this posture. A little bit about Zen.
I would like to translate first.
Okay, please translate.
There are some of my yoga members there. 今天是我们第2节课，然后上一节课呢，老师主要讲的是坐禅的姿势、体态。今天我们重点讲呼吸，还有就是你头力意识应该怎样控制。然后上周我们上完课之后呢，有一个人提了一个问题，就是盘腿莲花坐盘不了怎么办？应该有哪些瑜伽的练习可以帮助我们打开胯，然后做好那个做到莲花那个动作。然后我今天稍微简单跟大家介绍几个练习。Okay, I would like to talk a little bit about the lotus pose. The lotus is very difficult for everybody, I think. For me also. I couldn't sit in lotus like for a long time after I start Ashtanga yoga practice until I did Vipassana Vipassana for 10 days. After Vipassana, I opened my hip. I couldn't make it the lotus before that. So I think the lotus is very difficult. If you want, my experience is as I sit longer in Zazen, my hip opened. It's not my hip opened, I sit on lotus, and then I start getting better in Zazen. I think the Zazen helped me open my legs, my hips. So there are some exercise if you wanted to do to help your open your hip. Like I would like to show you. One is this one. So you can sit feet together, open your feet like open a book, stay straight, and then inhale, exhale, bend forward. You can keep for 10 or 5 breaths and then come up. The second one is your forehead on your feet, round your back. This one will help you open your hip also, like this. For half lotus, open up. Yeah. So for half lotus, you can bend your knee, put half feet, the feet up, and then bend forward for open one side of your leg. But because be careful when you're doing lotus, try to make sure you close this part, engage your knee, close your legs, like engage your knee, and then you put your leg on the other one. If you just go like this, it's little dangerous for your knee. So my suggestion is you close your knee first, and then put on your leg. The other side also the same. But in Ashtanga also, Zazen, we do the right feet first, and then the other one. And it will take a long time to open your hip, but you can try stretch. Okay. Is that, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So how do you say, don't hurt yourself, don't force it. You don't have to sit in full lotus, and if you can't sit in half lotus, it's not a necessary condition for doing zazen that you sit in the lotus posture. On the other hand, of course, it's always important to stretch just a little bit and to get a little bit out of your comfort zone. Zazen is not about being as comfortable as possible. You try to get just a little bit out of your comfort zone, and then over time, over the months and years, you get more flexible, but don't force it, I would say.
就是刚才有一个人提问，就是莲花做那个动作，如果做不了的话，不用特别的强求，不要特别使劲的做莲花那个动作。当然我们就是坐禅不是为了要让自己舒服，不是为了舒服而坐在那儿，当然会有一点不舒服的时候，但是不要特别强求，可以不用盘莲花，单腿盘也可以，或者两个脚都放下来也可以。
Today I want to talk about the breath and then about the mind. When we give instructions about Zen meditation in the tradition of Dogen Zenji, which is the person who founded Soto Zen in Japan 800 years ago. He's the one who brought Soto Zen from China to Japan. Then we rely quite a lot on the words of Dogen Zenji. And Dogen Zenji wrote a text which is called Fukan Zazengi in Japanese. That means a universal recommendation of Zazen. And in this text, he explains quite a lot about the posture, but he says almost nothing about the breath. The only things he says that you should breathe quietly through the nose. And he says that at the beginning of Zazen, you should take one big breath. I wanted to look for the Chinese characters, but I forgot it. I wanted to show you. In Japanese, it's called Kanki Issoku. And the character for kan, so when I write it like this, you will see it the other way around. But it probably means to yawn, to open your mouth very big, like this. But nobody really does this, at least in Antaiji, nobody really takes a big breath through the mouth. Usually right from the beginning, you breathe through the nose. Anyway, what Dogen Zenji says is take a deep breath and then breathe naturally through the nose.
今天我们主要说呼吸，因为日本的禅是从道元禅师来的，道元禅师之前来到中国，把禅带到了日本。道元禅师有一本书，道元禅师主要的那个著作就是福堪杂赞记福堪杂赞记普赞坐禅记。然后在那本书里面呢，讲了怎样坐禅的姿势，然后也很少的，就是没有怎么谈到如何呼吸，他只是谈到了坐禅的时候呢，要用鼻子呼吸，然后在坐禅之前要有一个大的深呼吸。但是就是平时他们在安泰寺或者其他的寺庙里面没有见过，就是大家在坐禅之前有一个特别明显的一个深呼吸，要把嘴巴张开，像书里写的一样，把嘴巴张开，像打哈气一样一个深呼吸，没有那样做。大家只是用鼻孔呼吸，然后坐禅的时候自然的呼吸。他还没说完，他还继续说。
Thank you. One thing that might be more different to yoga as well. Dogen Zenji doesn't say that you should use diaphragmal breathing, but usually it says that rather than using the breast to breathe, you use the diaphragm. So when you breathe in, your belly extends. When you breathe out, your belly contracts. So it's less the breast that moves, but the diaphragm when you breathe. And also in yoga and maybe other styles of meditation, there are lots of different ways of breathing. For example, the so-called triangle way, where you breathe out for, say, 4 or 5 seconds, then you breathe in for 5 seconds, and then you hold the breath for 5 seconds, and then you breathe out again. Or the square version, where you breathe in, hold the breath, then you breathe out, hold the breath. And in Zen, we don't do any of this. So you breathe naturally. And from my experience, also because you don't move and you relax the diaphragm, usually the exhalation, breathing out, is quite long, while the inhalation might be not as long. In Ashtanga yoga, you try to keep it even. Same amount of exhalation like inhalation, but in Zen, you spend more time on exhalation than on inhalation, usually. But you don't have to force that. So if your breathing in and breathing out is even, that's also okay. You don't have to force it. You don't have to make it as long as possible. But I would say from my experience, your breath gets longer and longer and longer, which actually also then happens to be convenient when you chant sutras, because when you chant, for example, here I got the Heart Sutra. When you chant, you do it like kanji, zaibo, sa, gyojin, hanya, hara, mita, jisho, kengo, onkai, kudo, issai, kuyak, shari, shi, shiki, fui, kuku, fui, shiki, shiki, sokuze, kuku, sokuze, shiki. All the time you're breathing out, and you have only kind of a split second to breathe in. So when you chant, it's also convenient to have a long exhalation and a short inhalation. But maybe Xuan-san, you want to translate?
Yeah, I don't know if I can remember everything. 他刚才就是说，我们在坐禅的时候呢，其实不像我们练瑜伽的时候要收腹，对吧？我们要摩拉班达收紧往上提，盆底肌上提。但是在坐禅的时候没有这个要求，大家是吸气的时候呢，腹式呼吸，吸气的时候肚子放松，吐气的时候往回收，是腹式呼吸的啊。然后呢，因为我们在练瑜伽的时候是下边收紧。空气是从就是在胸腔是吧？大部分是从上边，呼吸是从上边，下边要收紧。但是在坐禅的时候呢，不是，它是主要是腹式呼吸放松。但是也没有特别的要求啊，就是你一定要放松啊。还有一个就是它呼吸，你看我们在练瑜伽的时候呢，吸气和吐气要平衡的。就是四拍吸气，四拍吐气，但是在坐禅的时候呢，幕后老师的经验是吐气会比较长，吸气比较短，但是不是说你本来你是两个呼吸是平衡的，你一定要追求它就是吐气要长。当然，两个呼吸平衡也是可以的，不是不可以。但是老师的经验是他在坐禅的经验是吐气会比较长，因为他们在坐禅的时候会念经，就刚才老师念的是心经，要一口气念一句话特别特别长。所以它吐气会比较长，然后可能才有几秒钟吸气，然后又一口气特别长。它是由于这个经常平时要念经的经验，可能他在坐禅的时候吐气会比较长，吸气比较短，大概是这个意思哈。
Some teachers recommend that at the beginning of the practice you concentrate on the breath, because that makes it easier for you to stay awake and focused in the moment. Dogen Zenji himself was quite critical of concentrating or counting the breath. Maybe because when we do that, we try to be in control. We try to control our Zazen practice, and we try to improve it. And Dogen Zenji was very critical of this idea of using Zazen to get better at concentration and have a better focus. But if you feel that your mind is all over the place, or whenever you sit after 5 or 10 minutes you start to sleep, concentrating on the breath is not something that I would say you shouldn't do it. So you can do it if it helps you, especially in the beginning. Most of the day you're completely unaware of the fact that you're breathing, but in Zazen, starting there, I think, is not a bad thing. Or if you get lost in thoughts and you don't know, well, how can I get back into the present moment right here and now? One easy thing is to just be aware of exhalation, inhalation, and even that is not so easy. After 2-3 minutes, your mind will drift away again, but at least it's something that where you can return. The problem with this, if you only do that, is that your mind, the focus of your mind will be very narrow. But ideally in Zazen, you're aware of the whole panorama of what's happening here. So you have your eyes half open. So ideally, you're not only aware of the breath, but also what you can see there, of the sounds that you hear, of the whole physical sensations from your feet to the top of your head. Of course, also including the breath, but not only the breath, the whole awareness of the posture. And as I will say next, actually, you're also aware of many things that happen in your mind. But if that's too much for you, if it's too much, then please feel welcome to concentrate on the breath.
就是有一些老师呢，在坐禅的时候呢，会建议大家，比如关注呼吸，或者是数数，就数自己呼吸了几拍。但是道元禅师他没有建议大家这种坐禅的方式，因为道元禅师认为，就是如果你一直在数自己的呼吸，或者是只关注呼吸的时候呢，其实你的注意力是只在呼吸上边，然后你是想控制自己的坐禅，想要提高自己的坐禅，这样就违背了我们坐禅的一个目的。坐禅的目的就是应该没有目的，就是不应该有个目标，你只是坐在这儿。但是也不是说完全就是你不可以这样做。比如说，你的思想一直不能集中，很难集中，你当然是可以数节奏，就数自己的呼吸，然后关注呼吸。但是坐禅的时候，应该是看到整个全面，不只是关注呼吸，也要注意到自己的坐着的姿势，还有周围的环境，它是整体的一个观察。你要意识到整体，不是只是一个小部分。但是如果你很难控制自己的话，也是可以的。但是道元禅师的那个教授就是不要数自然的呼吸。
The next thing is the mind, and that's at the same time the most easy thing and the most difficult thing. It's easy because once you have adjusted the body, or you allow the body to adjust itself, and then you allow the breath to happen naturally while being aware of the breath, then there's really nothing else you have to do. You don't have to do anything with the mind. You don't have to adjust the mind. But it's difficult because, well, there's actually nothing more difficult than not doing anything with the mind. We also want to do something with the mind. The mind wants to do something. In Japan, there's a word that's pronounced mushin. I don't know what's pronounced in Chinese, maybe wushin or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes, the same.
In English, it would be no mind or empty mind. So people suppose when you do Zazen, there's no mind, or the mind will be empty. All of your thoughts disappear. But what happens, maybe already last week you experienced for yourself, if it was your first time, that a lot of things come up in the mind. The mind is not empty. There's no empty mind. So the question is, what do you do with these things that come up in the mind? And the answer, again, is, well, you don't have to do anything with it. Well, one example that people often use, it's like clouds in the sky. You hope that there's a blue, clear sky, but what happens is there's all kinds of clouds. And sometimes the whole sky is covered, sometimes it's raining, sometimes there's thunder. But actually, the sky doesn't have to be bothered by that. If there's clouds, let it be cloudy. Don't worry about it. If it's raining, let it rain. Don't worry about it. Don't play around with the clouds. Don't touch the clouds. Or another example that you could use, suppose you're standing in front of a railroad, and from time to time there's a train passing by, or maybe you're sitting on a bench at the platform, it's a station, the trains stop, and then after a while they leave again. And that's like thoughts. So it would be easy if there were no thoughts, but thoughts come and go. The problem is if you get into the train, then the thought will carry you away. And actually, that often happens when you're sitting in a train. You forget that you are moving and you think it's the world that's moving past you. So when you're thinking and you're absorbed in the thoughts, you forget that you're not here anymore. You think that yesterday or tomorrow or whatever you're thinking about, that's real. And you forget that the reality here is real. So there's no problem with the fact that during Zazen thoughts come up and they disappear again. That's okay. It's just that you should try to avoid kind of riding with the thoughts. You don't step into the thoughts. You allow them to come and you realize, oh, there's somebody thinking, or thoughts are thinking. But it's not me that's thinking. And when you realize it's not me that's thinking, but thoughts come up just like birds or like cars that pass outside the house. When you realize that, then you also realize there's no reason why I must stop to think. You don't have to stop the birds from singing. You don't have to stop the cars outside the house. And in the same way, you don't have to stop the thoughts. Just allow them to pass one by one. And if you do that after a while, and maybe it's not 10 or 20 minutes, but it might be a year or 2 years or 3 years, you will realize these thoughts get less and they lose this almost magnetic power. They stop to be so attractive. So you don't get drawn into the thoughts so easy anymore.
OK， 老师刚才讲，其实是意识，就是对于自己的意识总是有，就是你在打坐的时候，老是有想法。其实这是特别简单的一件事儿，也是特别难的一件事儿。简单的事情就是你其实对这些什么事情也不用做，就是如果你有就是头脑一边想事情，意识有什么意识升起来的时候，什么也不用做，它是最简单的一件事情，但同时也是很难、最难的一件事情，因为什么都不用做反而更难。就是你在告诉你头脑不要做这件事情的时候，其实是你的思想又就是很想做这件事情，它是不就是最简单的事情，其实也是最难的事情。就像但是我们的意识就像天空一样，当天空有各种各样的。天气有的时候会下雨，有的时候会有云彩，有时候会闪电，你不用去想它，让它闪电的时候闪电，有云彩的时候有云彩，阴天的时候阴天，就是不用想去控制它，或者是就像你门前走过一辆车，这辆车从你面前走过驶过，你不用坐在车上边。不用坐在车上面，然后呢，忘了你在车上边，顺着你的思想走。一开始的时候会很难，就是思想总是升起来。但是其实你就像看到了鸟儿从你面前飞过去，你不用停止那个鸟的歌唱，或者是你看到一辆汽车从你面前驶过，你不用停止那辆汽车。就让思想像这些一样从你面前走过，你不用停下来去想这件事情。随着你的练习的加长，慢慢的就会慢慢变好，大概是这个意思。
I use this metaphor of the sky and the clouds, or of these trains passing by. Another metaphor that I often use when I talk about the mind is a meadow with sheep, and maybe during normal life you're not so aware of how many thoughts there are about all these sheeps on the meadow of your mind. But when you're doing Zazen and your mind quiets down, all these sheep that play their tricks on the meadow become more obvious. And the first thing that you usually start to think then is, I'm the shepherd. I'm the shepherd. I have to make sure that everything is in order on this meadow of my mind. So you start to build fences for the sheep, and you realize, oh, there's some black sheep among the white sheep. So I have to separate the black sheep from the white sheep. But when you start to do that during Zazen, you will become very busy. The shepherd becomes very busy, and the shepherd needs to realize that the sheep don't listen to the shepherd. So whenever the shepherd has finished building a fence, the sheep jump over the fence. Whenever the shepherd has separated the black sheep from the white sheep, they mix again. So after a while, the shepherd gets completely stressed and angry. And at one point you say, I want to kill all these sheep and make, how do you say, minced meat out of them. I want to kill them all. And then finally you have a no mind. But at that point, you have to ask yourself, well, who's causing all this trouble on the meadow? Is it really the sheep? No, it's the shepherd who's causing the trouble. So during Zazen, you have to forget about the shepherd. Don't play the shepherd. One thing that you can do, to use this metaphor of the meadow, there might be a big tree in the center of the meadow. So the shepherd can lie down under that tree and look up into the leaves. And at that point, you forget the sheep. And with this metaphor, I mean, for example, you can concentrate on the breath, or you can concentrate on the physical sensation. And when you do that, the thoughts are less attractive, or you forget the thoughts at that point. But another thing you can do, and that's what I wanted to say when I used this train metaphor, you can also take the position of the sky and look down on the meadow and observe the sheep without touching them, without trying to control them. You just allow the sheep to do whatever they want to do. And usually when you do that, the sheep relax quite a bit. They don't disappear completely, but if you not take the position of the shepherd, but of the sky, there's much less chaos on the meadow. And then a final step, as long as you're this observer, there's still a separation. It's me up here, the neutral observer, and there's the meadow down there with the sheep. And it might give you some calm to watch it from high above. But then there's still two me. There's the observer up here, and there's the muho with all his thoughts and emotions down there. Another thing you can do that takes, from my experience, it takes a little bit practice, but you can come down again and become one with the meadow. You try to be the meadow itself, and you allow the sheep to step on you, to trample on you, to feed on you, and after they have eaten all the grass, to shit on you. And you allow that to happen. Please, please, I'm here for you, and you can eat all you want. That would be for me kind of the final step of Zazen. Not try to control the sheep, and also not only observe them from high above, but to just be there for the sheep and allow them to be with you.
然后刚才老师提的那个2个例子，一个是 天空的那个例子，还有一个是就是那个车从你面前走过那个例子。如果你有思想的时候，老师还有一个例子，他经常提到就是羊。你的思想就像羊一样，平时日常生活当中，你可能也有好多思绪，但是你意识不到。当你坐下来的时候，什么都不做的时候，你会发现原来你很多很多的思想都会升起来。这个时候应该怎么办呢？可能你会给你的思想就像这些羊，围一个栅栏。但你发现你围完栅栏之后呢，这个羊就很想往外跳，或者是你想把白色的羊和黑色的羊分开。可是你发现当你刚把它分开的时候，羊又回来了。你是总是想控制它，可是你控制不了。老师有2个建议，一个是就像你面前有一棵大树，然后躺在树的面前，看到那棵树，让自己安静下来。还有一种方法是上帝视角，就是你从天空上往下看，看到白色的羊和黑色的羊，让这些羊就在下面，从上面往下看，一个俯视的视角来审视这件事情。还有第3个方法是老师经常用的是，让你和这些羊在一起，让你奉献自己、牺牲自己，和这些羊在一起，随意他们怎样做。基本上老师刚才是这个意思。
I talk too much. I think last week we said only 15 minutes. Maybe today we can sit 20 minutes, and after that, maybe there's still a little time for questions and answers. So I would invite you to sit with me first, swing the upper body from left to right to allow your body to find its center.
然后上一周呢，我们大概做了15分钟，老师讲了好多。这一周呢，我们做了20分钟，稍微长一点，跟老师一块儿可以先活动一下啊。然后那个20分钟以后可能会有提问，一点点时间，大家有问题可以提啊。我们开始坐禅了啊，准备好。
When you relax in this posture, it might feel like a ship that's lowering its anchor down into the ocean. And while you let go, and also rather than breathe with the breast, you breathe with the diaphragm. At the same time, you also allow your spine to stretch, and you allow your neck to stretch. You don't have to use force to stretch it, but in a natural way, your spine and your neck might grow a little bit. The breath should be natural, but if you relax, especially the exhalation might get longer than it usually is. And about the mind, just as I said, it's never going to be completely empty. You will notice how thoughts appear and disappear. You allow the thoughts to think themselves, just as you allow the birds or the cars outside of your house. You allow the birds to sing and you allow the cars to make a noise. You don't have to stop it. It's just that you should avoid letting the thoughts carry you away. And whenever that happens, it might still happen. Whenever it happens and you realize, oh, I was thinking, I wasn't here, but I was whatever happened yesterday. Whatever that guy told me yesterday, and I was thinking what I will tell him tomorrow when I meet him again. Whenever you realize that this happens, you return to this moment, return to what you can actually see, hear, you return to the perception of the body, and you return to the breath.
大家呼吸要自然，然后让你的思想放松，不要被思想所吸引，然后不要想之前日常生活的一些事情啊。然后那个坐禅的时候呢，后背挺直，但是不要太用力，就是自然的伸展。大概就是还是刚才老师提的那些要求啊，就是自然一点，然后不要跟着思想走，回来放松。
Okay, let's start to sit then. Thank you very much. This was the second time, and next time, because of Chinese New Year, we will take a break. But on February 7th, you can join again. And today, I think maybe we still have a little bit time. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask anything you would like to ask, either directly by unmuting yourself, or you can also use the chat function if you prefer to stay silent. Any questions? Yes, Julian, please.
Konbanwa, Muha-san. So I have a question about your shepherd metaphor.
Yes.
I've been dabbling on and off for years with Zazen. Do you presumably recommend leaving a metaphor away from the cushion, just thinking about that before you come to the cushion? So, I mean, you're not actively sitting on the cushion thinking about shepherds and sheep at any point, but rather thinking about that off the cushion. Is that right? What I'm saying is, particularly when you were meditating early on, were you ever, when you were sitting, actually thinking of those metaphors to help you settle on the cushion?
Not really. I mean, it's just a metaphor to explain what's happening when you're sitting on the cushion. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, that there's all these things that come up, these emotions, these memories from the past, the plans for the future, this idea, what I'm doing here, why don't I just get up and do something that's useful? And or when you're a long-term meditator, you might think, well, maybe I should do a little bit more about my focus. Maybe I should get my mind into better shape or whatever. So you don't have to think about the metaphor there then, but you might realize on the cushion that, oh, actually, I'm playing the shepherd again. I'm playing the shepherd again, and you probably get a sense for what it means to put yourself in the position not of the shepherd but the sky, and notice the difference by just observing these thoughts and emotions without touching them, without playing around with them. And what you did before, you try to somehow deal with them. And as the observer, you don't deal with them. You just allow them to be, and you aware of them, how they are. Or if that's maybe too far of a jump to make, you do this, what I explained, as you lie down under the tree. Of course, you don't have to think about the metaphor when you sit on the cushion, but you can concentrate on the breath. Keep your attention on the breath, and yet that will probably help you. And what I said is probably the most difficult to kind of get a feel of is kind of becoming the meadow. But when you get to that state of Zazen, also maybe, that's what Muho meant when he was talking about the becoming the meadow. But again, it's not that while you're sitting on the cushion, you have to think about the metaphor and then go through it step by step. So you can forget about it when you just sit, and also forget about the metaphor, forget about the clouds in the sky, and forget about the trains that pass the station.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
刚才那个人提的那个问题啊，就是刚才老师说那几个方法，像阳的那个，还有什么躺在树下看天空那个，他说这些方法是你在就是坐禅的时候，坐在垫子上的时候，要用这些方法，还是你不在坐禅的时候要用这些方法？然后老师刚才说，其实你在坐禅的时候，最好是什么也不要想，就这些方法都不重要。当然是一个方法，比如说你可以就是关注呼吸，然后最好是以一个就是你可以就像躺在树下面什么也不想，或者是在天空上那个俯视的视角。好多人他是坐在垫子上，坐在那个 那个垫子上的时候呢，想哎呀，我为什么要浪费这个时间？我要站起来啊，我要去干好多事情，我要有我的计划。但是你在坐禅的时候，最好什么也不要想，就是忘记刚才老师说的那些方法。当然，那些方法是可用的，但是最好是可以只是坐禅，什么也不要想。大概其实是这个意思。
Any questions? Any comments?
就有时候什么都不用想，不想的时候会睡过去怎么办？会打瞌睡。
He said, when you don't think about anything, what about if you fall asleep? If you don't think about anything, if you're falling to sleep.
If you're falling asleep, probably the thoughts are not a problem. But yeah, I'm often asked, what can I do so that I don't fall asleep? From my perspective, from my experience, it seems to be that East Asians maybe have less problems with thoughts and emotions, but maybe more problems with the sleepiness, at least in Japan. It's usually the Japanese that sleep a lot, and it's the Westerners that are always on the cushion and I want to get up, or maybe the neighbor is snoring and I want to slap my neighbor, and he's kind of, how do you say, keeping me from concentrating. Whatever. For me, it's very hard to say something about what you can do when you're sleepy, because I never really had that problem so much. One thing you can do, if you put something on the top of your head, like this, that, for one thing, helps you to concentrate. And generally, I think it's said, when you feel nervous and agitated, you should concentrate, for example, on the belly or on the feet. So you move your concentration downwards. While if you feel sleepy, it helps if you concentrate on the tip of the nose or on the top of the head. So if you put this cushion on top of the head, that helps your concentration to go upwards. And also, when you get sleepy, your head tends to drop forward. So what's going to happen? The cushion falls down, and then you wake up. So if you're really sleepy, you can, well, have this cushion on your head or something else, a pen or whatever, and whenever it falls down, then you know, oh, I was moving, so you can move it up here again.
大概知道了吧，月月姐，大概能听懂哈。他说在头上顶个东西，或者是注意力放在鼻尖上面，会帮助你就是精神集中。像一些人他可能思想不集中的话，气往下沉，就是注意力往下，会帮助你精神集中。但是你要是犯困的话，往上走。然后还有就是西方和东方的那个文化可能不一样，日本人比较容易犯困，然后西方的人像他们可能就是思想容易不集中，可能文化也有差异。老师没有过就是这种特别容易犯困的经历，他说，但是你可以尝试一下顶个东西，或者是把思想放在鼻尖上边。
Or if you have the opportunity to visit us at one point in Osaka on Sundays, you can sit on this wall, and also it helps you stay awake, because if you sleep, it's pretty dangerous.
就是星期日的时候，我们在那个大阪城公园坐禅的时候，我们坐在那个墙那个沿儿上边，你坐在那儿，下边是水，下边是湖，坐在上面你也睡不着。
Any other questions?
Yes, Aiko here. I have a question about the posture.
Yes.
And I would like to know, I have the feeling that the posture is a little bit like it's forward. If I try to stretch my head to the ceiling, it feels very stiff and like I have a hollow back and something. And if I relax a little bit, and it's going a bit forward, and it's more stable then. I feel like it's more stable in the belly. Is that right, or can you say anything about that?
From my experience, like, let me sit like this now. Like when I swing, of course, the body is pointing forward, but eventually, when what I call the body is finding its center, the hips are pointing a little bit forward. but the spine and the neck, I would say, are pretty straight. So in my case, especially if you sit for a long time, if I sat like this would be very tiring because I always have to kind of work against gravity. But if your body is straight like this, you don't have to work against gravity. For me, it's much more relaxing to sit like this than, for example, like this. This on the long term would be more tiring for me. So I think with most Zen monks, when they meditate, it's more like this, kind of straight, I would say. Or I don't know if with the camera, if you could see it.
So your feeling is like it's really straight, like
yeah, I would say it's pretty straight. It should be pretty straight.
Okay, I will have a look at me when I try it. Thank you.
刚才他说他有一个问题，就是关于坐姿，他总是往前倾，坐着的时候身体总是不自觉往前倾，这个是不是一个大的问题？老师说其实不是一个大的问题，但是如果你可以尽量坐直的话，尽量坐直，因为坐直了之后不是那么省力气，不容易累。尽量是往后仰，坐直，后背挺起来，就是后脑勺这个地方往上顶。然后后背挺直，坐的不累。如果你重心一直往前靠，你可能会一直重心要往回抓，就是身体的平衡不好找，特别容易累。
In Europe, it's already at the end of the lunch break now. But if you still have questions, a couple of minutes we can still spend together. Anything else you want to ask?
老师，我有一个问题，就是那个我们在坐禅的时候，老师说，刚才我听的是不仅仅是就什么都不要想嘛，什么都不要想，然后又要关注呼吸，所以我觉得这个我一关注呼吸的话，而且刚才老师说那个呼吸还有那个吐气长、吸气短，那我就这时候就开始要想关注呼吸，我其实在想呼吸，那到底这个是不是矛盾的啊？我想知道这个。
You said don't think about anything when you're doing zazen, but also about the breathing. You mentioned your experience exhale longer, inhale shorter. But when she focus on the breathing, then she start to lose the concentration.
Well, then she doesn't have to. You don't have to concentrate on the breathing. From my experience, when your mind is all lost and shattered all over the place, and you're not even really sure if you're awake or if you're sleeping, it helps to get the mind back on the breathing. But you don't have to always have it on the breathing. Rather, I would say stay in the moment, and the breathing is part of this experience right now. But when I sit, I don't always focus on the breath. The breath is part of this reality right now, but there's the things I see, there's the things I hear, there's the whole physical perception, and there's also the thoughts. So I don't say don't think, but there are thoughts, and what I said is don't write on the thoughts, so to speak. Don't let the thoughts carry you away. But in Zazen, there's also thoughts, just like the sounds of the birds. And again, if focusing on the breath isn't good for you, then don't do it. You don't have to focus on the breath.
老师就是说，就是坐禅的时候，不是让你什么都不要想，不是说不让你有想法，是可以有想法，因为你在坐禅的时候会有各种各样的想法产生，会出来，但是不要和想法一起走，不要让你的想法把你带走，就是不要顺着你的想法走得越远，你还是要回来。如果呼吸，就是你要关注呼吸的话，一直会打断你的精神集中，那就不要关注呼吸。
Any other questions? Anything else?
Maybe on the thoughts, as you mentioned it before, like getting carried away by thoughts. How to recognize that? I think I feel it at some point, but then it may take a long time until I recognize, and how to really recognize that you are currently not taken away. So is there some signs, like for instance the hands or something like that, they start to drift, or?
Also, yeah, the position of your thumbs might change, but basically when you're carried away by thoughts, you don't realize it. I mean, that's a sign that you're carried away, that you don't realize it. When you realize that you're carried away by thoughts, you're already returning to the here and now. But the miraculous thing is, like when we talk about mindfulness, often teachers of mindfulness say that mindfulness means to be able to stay with the breath as long as possible. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But most of us are not able to do that. But after 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, we get carried away. But the miraculous thing is that even if we stay in the thoughts for maybe 5 minutes and we don't realize it, at one point we wake up again. Oh, I've been thinking. I've been thinking. And that's when real mindfulness happens. And people are not really aware that that's the real miracle, that you can wake up. Often what happens in that moment that people say, oh shit, I was supposed to stay with the breath and I've got carried away. But rather you'd say, wow, I got a little awakening here. I was thinking in thoughts and now I got aware of that. So in the beginning, maybe 5-10 minutes you spend thinking and then you get aware of that. But over time, you get quicker. So over time, you still get carried away, but after 30 seconds, return to this moment. But there's no sure way to kind of always keep track. If that would be possible, you would never get carried away, but you will get carried away.
Thank you.
刚才他说，就是当你就是让你的思想带走的时候，其实大部分时间是你不知道你已经随着你的思绪就是走神儿了啊。其实当你知道你走神儿的时候，你已经醒过来了，就是你已经回来了。可能前面的5分钟、10分钟，你就是随着你练习的加长，其实你就会意识到这些。这个就是我们要坐禅的一个怎么说一个方法，一个目的，就是要意识到自己的思想，你现在已经不在这儿，然后要回来。其实没有一个特别好的方法说让你不去，就是不知道自己跟着他已经走了，但是我们的练习就是尽量知道自己已经跟他走了，然后要回来。老师可能就大概就是这个意思啊。
Any other questions? If not, then if you like, we can see each other here in this Zoom room, not next week, but in 2 weeks. February 7th, same time, 8 o'clock in the evening in Japan and 12 o'clock in Europe and early morning in America. And in Australia and China is just a little bit earlier in the evening, I think. So I would be happy to see you again. I probably explained about most of the basics now. So starting in 2 weeks, if you have questions, you can also start to ask in the beginning, or when I upload this to YouTube, you can also in the comment section ask questions, and I will discuss those questions in February. Or I can also talk about the history of Zen if you want to hear about that, or about koans, about the philosophy of Zen, if you like. But as I said the first time, I would also like to spend more time actually practicing. This time also we said only 15 minutes, but I hope that at one point we will sit 30 minutes, double the time. Okay, thank you for joining. Have a nice Monday and see you again.
Thank you for joining. Please donate Muho. Will help us keep the class continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I link Muho's website in the chat. Please check the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.